All right, Brother Tehuti, I remember you saying in times past about, you know, all the different ideologies that we have. I remember you said a lot of them stemmed from or came about and were created, some by the rape and what happened to us as a people, and all the different shades and colors that came about as a result of that trauma. Elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay. Yeah, well, again, today, as we watch, you know, our own media networks, and, you know, from Babatv, Sinetta TV, the number of videos that are displayed, you can see the number of different philosophies or ideologies that the different spokespersons among us have. And I mean, it ranges from what I call the handful, and I'm in the smallest number, the revolutionaries, you know, to those that are, you know, what is called black African nationalists or African American nationalists, to cultural nationalists, you know, folks who are no deeper into understanding that they're African people than, you know, like the fact that they will decorate themselves, you know, like with some kente cloth or something, you know, like, but African nationalism is much deeper than that. Then you have the integrationists, and you have those, what I call the real sick black people, who are the assimilationists. That is, they want to just completely obliterate the whole idea that they have any type of stake in maintaining any aspect of who and what they are as a black person or an African person, and they just want to be known as an American. Don't identify them by color, don't identify them by the nation that produced them, just identify them about who and where they are today. And I said that's the cause of a lot of the confusion. In the cultural nationalists, you take a group like the Hebrew Israelites, you take a group like the some of the Moors, you know, some of the Moors, and I hope the brothers will forgive me for not pronouncing the full, you know, a name of the organization, but again, that's a culture, and they are nationalists just to that culture, as opposed to, you know, a broader perspectives. So, with those different types of philosophies, it causes confusion. But the one that we rarely address is the one produced by the rape of our women during the you know, captivity and during enslavement. And what happens there is a lot of the slave owners produce children who look a whole lot like him. Right? But because of the American law, or somewhere they put it in their sets of you know, like laws, it's not in the Constitution, they created a policy called the one-drop rule. So if you have 1 drop of black blood, no matter how you look, you were considered black. So you have a lot of people who, you know, like a lot of light-skinned black people who otherwise wouldn't be known what they were ethnically, but who are classified as black. So going all the way back to the early 1800s, when there began to be large numbers of these mixed-race people who were set free or given manumissions by their fathers, right? That in the early movements, what they wanted to do politically and philosophically was just assimilate or integrate right into the white colonial system. They weren't looking for anything else other than to prove that they were just as good as their daddies. And these are the people who led the early, what's called the Negro Convention movement between the late 1820s up through the 1830s, that by 1835, at what was, I think it's called the 5th National Negro Congress, these black people voted, we will stop calling ourselves African. We will strike the name of Africa from all of our institutions, and from henceforth we'll be known as people of color. That was one of the resolutions from the convention. So here again, how they thought. Whatever, don't call me African, you know, like, and even though we had the AME Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, they were advocating for that church to drop Africa from its name. See, like in other organizations, the African Benevolent Societies, the Free African Societies, these were all institutions that free black people who had somehow gotten out of slavery, who had been given their freedoms by manumission, or their ancestors went all the way back to the early the 1620 period, and they were descended from the original 19 indentured servants. So they were organizing ways to secure themselves in a society, but this is the first group that organized that wanted to get rid of the name. All right, and not only did that affect how we thought of ourselves to some degree then, it came all the way down through the 1950s and 60s, you know, like what I call the reversal of the name. People of color became colored people. That's where that term came from. Well, they wanted to assimilate. Then you have your integrationists. These are, I guess, the largest segment of organized black people who say, well, we're in, you know, we were kidnapped out of Africa, that some Africans participated in the kidnapping and the selling us into this captivity, right? And they never wanted to go back. They wanted to stay in the American society and just wanted to integrate themselves as black people into America as it developed. So whatever train that the white man was on in developing the United States of America, these black folks said, we on this train, and we want to be on this train, and we going where they going. That's your integrationists. Again, the cultural nationalists, you know, like centers from some are religious cultural nationalists. There are smaller groups, of course, that are that are cultural nationalists based on, like the Osiris Set Society, whose culture based on the teachings of ancient Kemet. So there are various subgroups. The Nation of Moorish Scientists is kind of a cultural nationalist because of, especially in the early days, from the time that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali put forth the teachings. The Nation of Islam is a type of cultural nationalism within religion, because again, the religion of Islam is at the center of their teachings, and the culture of doing for self-development, pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps, is part of the essence of the teaching of the Nation of Islam. There are not as many what we call political nationalists today as there used to be, but the Black Panther Party would be an example of political nationalists. In a way, in the prison system, the black guerrilla family is kind of an example, of black nationalism, as such. So when I say the smallest group being the revolutionaries, I think there's the All African People's Revolutionary Party. It was the last real revolutionary group organized in this country, and there are still members of the party around, within our community. So by having maybe the most important group, the largest group, the largest group of black thinkers, we call accommodationists. That is, they accommodate themselves to whatever is going on. Whichever way the wind is blowing, they go this way, they go that way, but they haven't really sat down and formulated through deep thought and analysis concrete political philosophy. So they just kind of accommodate themselves to what's going on. I know a lot of people who go out and vote, and they vote Democratic every time. They've never gone to a Democratic community meeting, or they've never gone to a Democratic Party meeting, but because black people vote Democratic, so, I'll put that in quotation marks, these folks just accommodate themselves to whatever the community, quote-unquote, politics is, and just go vote. So that's what I mean about the confusion in our community and some of the causes of it. And again, one of the brothers that I still hold very high in my heart, his friendship, his political leadership, was Kwame Ture. And Kwame's spent the last, I say, from the 1970s until his entrance into the realm of our ancestors. One of his primary statements was always, we must be organized. As a people, we need to be organized. Organized, organized, organized. You can't do very much as an individual. Yeah, you know, like it's Babatv song. A lot of his songs always stays in my consciousness, but one of the lines in one of his songs that every need has an ego to feed. And because of that, you know, like a lot of us, you know, will get, you know, like, hey, we're satisfied if we get a chance to get on the world stage or camera or screen someplace and say something, so that, you know, like, hey, that satisfies me, the individual. But in order for us as a people to collectively really get ourselves up out of this abysmal state of affairs that we actually live in, the only way, the best way of doing it is to do it through by being organized. The people must be organized. The people must be organized. We have churches, we have community organizations, we have fraternities, we have, you know, we have a lot of we have a lot of organizations that exist around social and fraternal type affairs, but we really don't have a real political organization that really talks about, you know, like, what is our plan for this? What's the 25-year plan for the African American? You know, like, just whichever way the wind is blowing. I mean, you know, like, if do we have any, you know, is it in our best interest to participate to make sure that Donald Trump is only a one-term president? The fact that we're probably going to have a black woman, a senator from California, in the Democratic primaries running for the presidency. Are we so disappointed because as African Americans, Barack Obama doesn't seem to have appeared to have done anything directly for us, that we're not going to participate? Is that going to be the mantra that folks are going to use? But Obama didn't do anything for you, so why are you going to participate? So, I mean, there are a lot of things that we need to seriously talk about, have serious discussions about. But in terms of our future, where we're going to go down the road, the captain of those ships need to be us. And to ensure that we're the captains of the ship, that we're the captain of our own souls, we have to be organized and come together and discuss what we want. Yeah, I mean, you know, like 50, 60, 70 years ago, we talked about the, in fact, over 100 years ago, we talked about the one of these geographic territories on this continent ought to be ours. You know, like that the government ought to give us land so we can create our own state. Well, in 20, you know, like here, going into 2020, does the government need to give us some land to create our own state? Or can we understand that if most of us picked up and moved, selected the area that we want to be our state, all we got to do is move there and become the majority of people in that geographic area, and we'd be surprised, you know, like what it said, possession of the law, possession of the land is what you need. And then once you're the majority, you can create the kind of conditions, you can amend the constitutions of your state in your state legislatures to create the kind of state, to create the kind of lifestyle that you think you want to do. So there are other ways, but there are a lot of people, in my experience, that the last thing they want to do would be to live, they want to live in an all-black city, and I'm sure they wouldn't want to live in an all-black state. But the other thing that we need to realize, that with the exception of the new immigrants to America, that is the political hot topic of this era, talking about the Spanish-speaking peoples from Mexico, Central America, and South America. They are rapidly outnumbering African Americans and becoming the major, quote-unquote, ethnic minority population in the country. And as we can see all around the D.C. metropolitan area, that because of racism and housing policies, that a lot of these Spanish-speaking people live in our neighborhoods and would be our natural allies. And what a lot of people don't understand is the real fear that white folks can see, but we don't appear to pay it any attention. But white Americans are the political minority now. See, and they see that because of their negative birth rate, that the other peoples are out, are growing faster than they are. So this is not, like 20 years from now, it's not a white man's country anymore. So as the politics shift, as the population demographics change, do we have a plan as an ethnic group for that time period? Or are we just going to accommodate ourselves to just kind of go along to whatever the flow is? I'm encouraged by the number of young African-American women who are participating in the women's movement. I think that I understand the fears that a lot of brothers express, and even to some expressions, because now the white feminist movement is not the black movement. And if the sisters' eyes are being opened up because of that circumstance, doesn't mean that they have to stay just there. They'll stay there if we aren't organized and offer them a more in-depth analysis of the political situation. Yes, stand up for your rights. Yes, stop all the sexual harassment that's been aimed at you during our whole sojourn in this country. All of those things are great, but there's a bigger agenda that you must also pay attention to. See, just the fact that one of the reasons that you're out there in your numbers and in the places that you're in is because part of the policies of the federal and the state governments over the last 40 years has been to incarcerate and kill your men. See, and it's left you out there. I noticed that, again, I'm old school. I come from an era where growing up in segregation and still having the terms and all the negative terms, embedded in my soul. So I'm a little more reluctant to step out, across, quote unquote, the racial barrier. I'm not looking for love over there across the barrier. I'm not looking for monies from across the barrier. I mean, I'm not looking to elevate any aspects of their culture as if it's more important than mine. So I'm kind of old-fashioned, like I know younger folk, they think that all the barriers have been broken down and just let them live like they live and what have you. They see no value in having any wearing things that are uniquely inspired by and comes out of the concepts, of African culture and how the African culture evolved and its rebirth here on the American continent. So I hope I'm not just rambling and that I've said something that makes some sense. But yeah, there's a lot of mixed up thought and divergent thought within the African American community. Not that is not healthy, having divergent thoughts, but in terms of having a coherent policy, see, like that we should be thinking about and moving toward. I think that should be the foundation of what our discussions should be about. Thank you.
Tehuti, I want to just talk briefly because you see I uploaded the lecture you did at Tony Browder's Wisdom Wednesdays, dealing with Prince Hall Masonry and the socialization of that in Washington, D.C. Explain the difference between, I didn't know there was a difference between Masonry and Freemasonry.
Okay. For me, it's rather easy. Within Masonry, as using that term as it's used in reference to the organization, are the teachings from the Nile Valley that came down from the ancient days into Europe. In the legends and the history of what's called English Freemasonry, they discuss these teachings that came down from what they call Hermes Trismegistus. All right. Hermes Trismegistus is a European name that was put on an ancient Egyptian or ancient Kemetic brother. And we're talking about the teachings of the original brother Tehuti as such. And the best book that I would suggest to the viewers to understand who he was and what teachings that they are talking about is a book called Ancient Futures by Brother Chandler. I can't remember his first name now, but Brother Chandler from here in Washington, D.C. wrote a book called Ancient Futures, and he talks about these doctrines. Well, during the Middle Ages, as such, from 800 A.D., with the creation of the Holy Roman Empire by Charlemagne, the Catholic Church took over the European continent as the primary power. And nothing was allowed to be taught that the Catholic Church didn't approve of. And during that time period, science, mathematics, and what we call the esoteric knowledge of the Nile Valley was outlawed. It couldn't be taught. So in little places, very specifically where European men were taught the art of building with stone, and they were building castles, they were building big stone cathedrals, all right, during that age. The men learning the skills of masonry, that is the stone masonry, building in stone, also learned mathematics and geometry. And the root teachings of mathematics and geometry they taught came from the ancient Nile Valley cultures. So as the Europeans woke up out of the Dark Ages by being introduced, some by the Moors who had conquered Spain and were teaching there on the Andalusia Peninsula, some by Crusaders who in their travels from Europe to go over and fight in Western Asia and the lands around Jerusalem, they began to learn of the knowledge of the ancient world and began to bring some of those documents back. And that's when the Europeans, the English, and the Scots began to study these ancient documents. And out of the English system of studying these documents and studying this ancient esoteric knowledge, they developed an organization called Freemasons. And Freemasonry actually became the rituals and ceremonies of the Europeans that they put together for their organization. But these rituals and ceremonies that they put together, you know, like in their organization, had nothing to do with the ancient knowledge. You know, like so. In using what it would be like the brothers who form, you say, the Omega fraternity, all right, and just as a social fraternity to get together. You know, like well today, you know, like a lot of athletes are Qs, as it were. And in some cases, I've heard people say, well, most Qs, you know, the Qs are the athletic fraternity. I mean, it's bigger and it's more than that. But sometimes people characterize it that way. Or if they say alphas are the fraternity for the upper class blacks. Like, so in other words, they'll take fraternity and they will apply it as it is being used, like, and make it an upper class fraternity movement, but it's just a fraternity movement, it's not upper class. Well, Freemasonry is the organization that was put together primarily in England. There were some aspects of it in Germany, some aspects of it in France, some aspects of it in Scotland. But primarily the oldest organized Grand Lodge of Freemasons is an idea that came to existence in England in 1717. So Freemasonry is the English system, all right, of organizing, and running a fraternity. Freemasonry is the esoteric sciences that was developed in the ancient world, and inside of the organization of Freemasonry, there is some masonry practice and taught. All right, but masonry in and of itself, as their own encyclopedias define it, and I'm talking about Albert G. Mackey. You can look up the origin of Freemasonry in Albert G. Mackey's encyclopedia. Look up the origin of Freemasonry in Coils, that's C-O-I-L, in Coils' Masonic Encyclopedia. And in both of those sources, both of them link the legends from this ancient Hermes, or Hermes Trismegistus, as the source of of Masonry. That's my best explanation.